All right, looks like we're live. Let's just double check, make sure everything's running smoothly. We're still a few minutes early here. We just wanted to make sure we're up and running pretty well. So feel free to get settled in and get comfortable. We'll be here for a little while. All right, so we'll do official intros in a few minutes, but we've got Marissa and Kelsey here. Kelsey, as you can see, is over in the Bruins headquarters. Want to tell us where you're located and a little bit about where you're coming at us from?
Yeah, I'm right outside the TD Garden, actually, right down the street in the Bruins executive office.
And so this isn't actually, you don't actually have all the Bruins behind you. Is that what you're telling me? It's not.
Yeah, no, this is a lovely background of our conference room.
It's really, I believe it. I totally bought into it. I thought it was real. So guys, today's for those of you who are joining us early, thank you for being so darn punctual. Today's Kelsey's birthday. She's spending her birthday sitting here talking Snapchat with us, so I'm pretty excited. Make sure you tweet at her at Kelsey Ohman, OHMAN. Wish her happy birthday, and tell her how many great Snapchat tips that she's giving you today. She'll really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to give it about one more minute. Let folks hop on. I'm sure you guys all understand the stress of making sure all the technical things work out correctly. So I'm already in a good mood. We're already off to a good start. I did a little Snapchat announcement on my personal Snapchat to let people know we'd be here. So, make sure you cover all your bases, right? So for those of you guys who are here already, use hashtag Hub Office Hours. Just say hi. Let us know if you have questions. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that throughout this little chat, and I want to hear what you guys have to say, what kind of feedback you have, any questions you have, or just say hi. Or just say happy birthday to Kelsey. All right, so we're at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to get started here. Thank you guys so much for joining us in today. I know that we are competing against an Apple announcement, so I really appreciate you guys taking the time to miss out on that. I promise you we'll be done in about 30 minutes, so you won't miss too much of the excitement. Kelsey, you have any guesses about the big Apple rollout? I know you're an Android fan.
I think it's just going to be those headphones.
I'm going to lose them. I'm freaking out. I'm going to lose those Bluetooth headphones in 2 seconds. That's all you guys are missing. So stick around here. This is where the good stuff is. Okay, cool. So my name's Marissa. I am a social media manager here at HubSpot. I manage our Snapchat account. I'm here today with Kelsey Ohman. I'm going to chat with her a little bit more in a second. Just to give you guys a quick overview of what we're doing today. This is a little bit different than a typical webinar. We don't really have a script. We don't have slides. We don't have anything like that. This is just really an informal conversation. Our agenda is actually based off all the questions that you submitted when you filled out this form. So we have a lot of great questions from you that we're going to go over today. We're going to go over as many as we can. And if you have more questions, make sure you use the hashtag Hub Office Hours. I am following along on my phone. Oh my gosh, we already got a happy birthday tweet for you, Kelsey. And it's a little cat meme. It's a good cat meme. It's an A+ cat meme. So keep those coming. And we're just going to jump right in. So Kelsey is a digital engagement specialist at the Boston Bruins and TD Garden. So she has been on that team for a while, and she helped them kick off their Snapchat strategy. So she has a ton of valuable insights. They do some really cool big brand type stuff, and she's got a lot of really interesting stuff that we're gonna talk about today. So Kelsey, if you want to kick us off and talk a little bit about what in general, why you guys are using Snapchat, why you guys decided to get on the platform, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So we got on Snapchat a few months ago when the filters really rolled out. We thought it would be a good fit for two reasons. One is that everything we do is located in one small location, the TD Garden. So it made sense when people come to our venue that we had something to help them share their own content from the garden. So we used our geo filters. We started making those, and that was a good opportunity for us to share some of our branding and just letting people share their own experiences and create their own content in a medium that they're using. And that sort of leads into our second big reason is that our demo does use Snapchat quite a bit. On the TD Garden side, we have a lot of concerts, a huge variety. We're really hitting that audience. And then on the Bruin side as well, we see a lot of people using Snapchat.
Yeah, you guys just had a big Kanye concert there a couple days ago. Did you have any specific filters for him?
We did have a filter for him, yes.
Nice. So I think it's what you guys do is really cool because your use case is much different than what we're doing here at HubSpot. You guys have a physical location. It's B2C, we're B2B. It's a lot different. We sort of have a big scope of experience between the two of us. So, why don't we just jump right into it? We've got a handful of questions we pulled out from the audience. And again, if you have any more, feel free to let us know at #HubOfficeHours, and we'll be keeping an eye on those as well. So to get us started, we have a question from Elaine. So she wants to just sort of at a high level, Snapchat stories what are they going to do for a business? How can a business use them? What's really most helpful about that feature of Snapchat in general? I'll let you kick it off.
Sure. So Snapchat stories are great for telling your brand story and doing it in a more lighthearted, fun manner than you may do on your primary channels like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram even. Because they disappear so quickly, you can be a little more playful with them, and you can not worry so much about taking the time to craft the perfect snap. You do want to make sure it's always maintaining a consistent quality, but it's a little bit more offhand and ephemeral, which is nice. The other thing that's great about stories is that you don't need to do them all the time, because if you're not posting, no one really notices. You just don't show up in the feed of stories that are available that day. So it's great because you can activate it when you want and not activate it when you have nothing going on to share.
That's so true. I think that's something that I don't actually hear about a lot, but it's a really big advantage if you don't have a ton of time to invest into the channel. Maybe it's a good thing that you can do when you have a big event or when you have big things that are coming up. But yeah, it's not like Twitter where someone can go back and look at your profile and be like, oh, they haven't tweeted in 2 weeks. No one's really keeping that close tabs, which is really nice. I think ephemeral is like the word of the day. It's so different than anything else that's out there right now, except for Instagram stories, but we'll get into that a little bit later. One of the things that I love about using it so much for a brand is through stories, you can really do a single person perspective more than you can from a Twitter account or a Facebook account. And those typically really have to represent a brand voice. And on Snapchat, you can really just use your own voice, or you can highlight people in your company, or you can highlight people in your organization. I know you guys do a lot of that. Kelsey, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff you guys use stories for?
Yeah. So we go into any big event on either brand and sort of take a step back and think, is this right for Snapchat? We try to keep Snapchat content exclusive from our other channels. So if we would post it on Twitter, there's no reason to also post it on Snapchat. So we really consider things like, would our Snapchat audience be interested in this? What kinds of variety of content can we share from this event to look like it's just another fan at a concert? We want to be able to show something unique, like a behind the scenes access. And then the last thing is if we can, again, provide any sort of unique who we're talking to, and do we give it to someone else who's around? That's another thing that we consider, just to make sure that it's unique and different than what we're sharing.
Yeah, I think that's so important, is to make sure that it's different types of content, really cool, interesting stuff that you wouldn't necessarily do on other channels. That's so cool. And you guys, doing what you do, you have such sort of interesting, juicy content. So that's really exciting. So the next question is something that a lot of people ask me and is a really, really tough one to tackle. And so I'm interested how you guys handle this. So Ashley asked, she had a couple of questions, but this is the first one. She wants to know about creating and growing a unique audience on Snapchat. So I think that's one of the hardest parts, right? There's no discoverability. Yeah. There's no like Twitter, there's no retweeting, there's no, algorithm that'll help you out. Like you're totally flying solo. So how do you guys handle that? How did you build up that audience that you have?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is cross promotion, which isn't a huge surprise, but key here I think is when you are live and when you actually have content for people to find when they land on your profile. So we would cross promote on our other social channels. You can cross promote in email or on your site. You can have a Snapchat it lives there with your other social handles. There's a URL that you can plug in. It's just, I think it's snapchat.com/ad/your username. And a lot of people don't know that exists, but that'll bring people on mobile directly to follow you. So I think that's a good thing to just always have, as well as promoting if you're at an event, promoting in venue, if you have social screens or signage, just promoting and letting people know that you're live at that time and they can follow you there.
I think that was key for us too, is like the audience that you have on social already, those are going to be your people that really care. And yeah, exactly like what you said, in-house stuff, physical activations too are crucial. We did a ton of cross promotion on other social channels. I think the other thing that it would be cool to experiment with, and we've talked about doing a little of, and we're starting to sort of dip our toes in, is some takeovers with other brands that you think would have interesting audiences. We'll take over on your account, you take over ours if we think you have a really relevant audience, to sort of do some like co-marketing or co-branding, that kind of thing. You really have to get creative here. And so this is one of those reasons, if you decide you want to invest in Snapchat, you have to like really invest, because you're going to have to constantly be feeding that machine. So we'll notice, and I'm sure you feel this way too, is if we do a promotion, if we start, tweeting about a story we're doing, we'll see a huge bump in viewers. But if we don't for a week, we'll see everything plateau. And we'll talk a little bit more about analytics in a second. But do you see that as well, as you'll see a pretty big bump when you promote and then not much when you're not promoting?
Yeah, I think what's good about Snapchat again is that when you build that audience, those people will tune in again when they see you pop back up. But in terms of growth, you'll see that mostly when you're cross promoting.
Yeah, definitely. So that actually brings us to our next question. That was from the second part of Ashley's question, which was, how do you do analytics? And this actually came up from a bunch of people. Is Snapchat is not great with helping brands. They're really not. They're not built for marketers. So we sort of have to piece things together. So, when you guys are looking at your analytics, what kind of stuff are you looking at?
Well, from the geo-filter side, that's the only thing that does provide analytics. So it will provide uses and views, which are great. You can compare. Sometimes we'll look at uses of the filter versus uses of our event hashtag, for example. That's an interesting way to compare those two. For the rest, it's all about screenshotting the analytics for every single snap that you share, which is not fun. Setting an alarm 24 hours after your first snap, and then just screenshotting that as close as you can to that time to make sure you get updated numbers. But we look at views, we look at screenshots as a form of engagement, and then we look at retention rate as well to see both how long fans are interacting, and then make a recommendation of how long we should make our stories going forward.
How long? That's a good question. How long do you try to make your stories? Do you guys have like a sweet spot?
No, we look at every channel individually. So, for example, like the Bruins may have a different metric than TD Garden just based on our followers that we have, but we do just keep looking at that retention rate and seeing at what point do fans just drop off and are not interested anymore, and then try to keep it under that number. I think for us too, we do consider before every event, we plan out a storyboard of like, these are the things that we want to capture and can capture at this event, leaving room for things as they come up, opportunities that we can capture, but trying to at least go in with an idea of how many snaps we're going to do that day.
Yeah, as much as it's like an ephemeral thing, an ephemeral like network, it's so much of it does have to be planned out.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it takes so much longer when you're in the moment. I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
think like, all right, I'm just going to go into this event and like, I'm going to just Snapchat from it. But it's so much harder than that because you have to think about what's the story you want to tell, right? Like, what are you trying to get across? But yeah, in terms of timing for us at least, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys think if you have different experiences. You can tweet at us #HubOfficeHours and let us know what you think. We, after about a minute, we'll see a pretty steep decline where people are like no longer interested. But what is interesting is the people who stick around after a minute. Once in a while, we will do like a longer story. Those people stick through the whole thing. So one of the things you can see in Snapchat is it'll break down at each snap how many people you're losing, basically. And we'll see pretty much if they hang in there after a minute, like they're in it to win it. Like they want to know everything that you have. So it sort of depends on what's important to you, right? Do you care if you lose 40% of your audience, but the 60% that's there is still really interested? So those are sort of the things we're looking at. I don't think there's really a silver bullet. One of the other things that we do here is sometimes if we're doing a story that's like about Snapchat, for instance, and talking about how you should use Snapchat, we'll potentially try to drive you to some more content that we have available if you want to learn more. So Snapchat obviously doesn't have a click feature, but what we'll do is we'll do like a bit.ly link and we'll put that through actual like HubSpot UTM parameters. So I can actually go in on the back end and say, okay, 15 of the people who saw that Snapchat story then downloaded that ebook. So maybe that's worth it. So there's a lot of different ways you can sort of make it work for you. I'm interested to hear, definitely let us know what you guys do. Are there any other tricks you have? I would love to hear it. I think, Kelsey and I talk to each other a lot about, how are you doing this? How are you measuring that? Because no one's really figured it out yet. So if you have any other tips, definitely let us know. So anything else on analytics? Did that kind of cover it? Anything else on your end?
I think that covers it.
It's not a lot of fun.
They don't give us much.
It's a lot of like my alarm going off on my phone on a Saturday at 10 a.m. And I'm like, why is this? What do I need? Oh, log into Snapchat. Okay, cool. So next question. So we had a couple of questions and you started talking about this a little bit, was about geo filters. So this is really something you guys have been doing for a long time, right? You were pretty early adopters on the geo filters. So I would love to hear sort of, you stuck with them for a while. Like, why are they working so well with you? What kind of best practices do you have to share with us? Like any words of wisdom, I'd love to hear them. And I'm taking notes on this too.
Yeah. So we try to make geo filters for every event at the Garden. We like to make them different so that fans who return multiple times have something new to see every time. Some things in the creation process for geo filters that we like to keep in mind are, the biggest one is considering the background when you're creating your filter, because some colors might not appear in your target environment, basically. So in a concert environment, a black text on the bottom probably won't show up because it's dark in there.
That's a really good point.
On the flip side, in a hockey arena, white is not going to show up because of the ice. So keeping that in mind is really important. One way to buffer against that is adding multiple borders with multiple colors around your text just to make sure that something pops. Some other things that they will tell you as well are not including hashtags, not filling your whole screen. And another one that we keep in mind for concerts in particular is just avoiding using the names of brands or people that you don't have permission to use. In terms of cost, I believe it's based on location and population density. That's what we've figured out. But it is relatively inexpensive. Want to run like a filter for an hour or two in a small location, that's definitely doable. It can be as low as $5 to run that.
That's really cool. That can be a really cool surprise and delight moment too, is just to, if you have a low budget, like you can still make this happen. And when you got started, it wasn't like it is now. It was a really high budget, but now you really can get in there. If you're a small business, if you're a mom and pop shop, like no matter what level you're at, $5 to do a filter around your store for an hour when you have a big event. That's so cool. And so they also, you told me about this, they just rolled out a cool new feature. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, these sort of like pre-built filters?
Yeah, so they have templates now for, mostly I think they're intended for personal use, but I can see some small businesses using them as well. They're made for celebrations, weddings, and birthdays, and you can plug and play different text boxes, change the colors around. There's a lot of unique options there that are great for people who are just starting out and maybe don't have the design resources that they would need to create one on their own.
Yeah, that's awesome. And can you talk a little bit more about, you mentioned earlier that there's some demographic data, like what kind of analytics do you get with these geo filters?
Yeah, you just get uses and views, which isn't a lot, but is helpful. And we use them just to compare against each other. So when we're creating so many, we'll see this one a lot of people used and this one only a few people used. So why was that? Is that the audience that was there? Is it the filter wasn't as engaging as the one that we made before? So those are the questions that we consider.
How do you, I'm just out of curiosity, like how do you know when a filter is really engaged? Like what is it typically that makes a filter really engaging? Is it like like the border is really cool, or is it something really funny or interesting on the inside? Or is it like the copy that you're using? Like what do you think is sort of like the thing that really makes an awesome filter? At least for you guys.
I think it's probably the design, if it's particularly like funny or is easy for people to use to take selfies or for basically the purpose that they're sharing. So ensure that it's something that you would actually want to use.
Yeah, definitely.
In front of your photo. And then one thing that is sort of an indicator that we see is if people are screenshotting their Snapchats and sharing them on other social platforms. That's usually when you know you have a good one.
That's true. How do you typically track that? Sorry, I'm like getting really into the weeds on this, but I think there's not a ton of content out there about this. So I think this is really interesting.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just do a Twitter search for like TD Garden and the word Snapchat.
Okay, cool.
And just see if anyone's sharing it that way, or I'll see it in our mentions.
Nice, awesome. Okay, cool. If you guys have any more questions, I noticed we've gotten a handful of tweets about this part of the conversation. If you have any more questions, let us know. We'll move on for now, but we can potentially come back if we have a little bit more time. Also, Kelsey's Twitter handle is @KelseyOman. Feel free to bother her forever. It's OHMAN, and mine is hi, it's Marissa. Okay, so next question is, we had a lot of good questions from someone named Alec. One of the questions he had, though, and I think is a really hot topic right now, is this Instagram stories situation. So what are your thoughts here? I have a lot of opinions. I think this could be an interesting conversation. So how do you think this affects, I guess to start, like, how do you think this affects marketers? How should they be thinking about Instagram stories with their Snapchat strategy?
Yeah, my first reaction was annoyed. It seemed like a complete copy of Snapchat stories, and in some ways it is.
Didn't even bother changing the name.
No.
Like they could have tried it.
The thing that's important, I think, to think about with Instagram stories is that you have a built-in audience and they're used to seeing your brand a certain way. So on Snapchat, your Snapchat audience is used to seeing you being more fun and playful, for example. On Instagram, they may be used to seeing you polished and serious, whatever your Instagram tone may be. That's what they're expecting from you. So in your stories, that's really where you can think about differentiating that content. I don't think it should be the same content on Instagram stories and Snapchat.
I've seen a lot of people doing
value.
How do you feel about that when people like upload, they like will sort of like upload something directly? Yeah. I think one of the things I like about Instagram stories is they actually, some of the nitty gritty features are different. Like the drawing tools are different. The filters are different. I think, what you're saying is like, it's the Snapchat is sort of the sillier thing. Instagram has always been a little bit more polished. They don't have, one of the things that makes Snapchat such like a silly sort of fun network is all these filters. Like Instagram doesn't have that. Like, do you think that might be something they might try to work into? Or do you think that like they know that the audience is a little bit different?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to be looking for that. But I think it would be a weird fit at the same time.
Yeah.
One thing that's good for Instagram stories is when you want to share a message on Instagram, but it's either going to take multiple photos to do that, like when you used to make a collage with like 18 little tiny square images, that can now be a story. If you want to share something really timely, but it may not be the best picture, maybe you have professional photos coming the next day, you can share that in your story and wait for the really photo to share in your stream later on.
Yeah, that's true. Do you think when it comes to like a smaller business, like maybe a smaller medium-sized business, and they maybe only have a handful of people on their marketing team, do you think it makes sense to try to do both, or do you think one makes more sense than the other? Like, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, the benefit of Instagram stories is that built-in audience. So it is the same in that you can activate it when you want and not activate it when you don't want to. So in that case, it may be a good place to start, at least practice making content like this that's really ephemeral, and it's a lot of just quick hits in a row and building a story. If people seem to start engaging with that, maybe that's an indicator that you should move that over to Snapchat and people would follow you there.
Yeah, people ask me a lot, like, because at HubSpot we're obviously B2B, and they're like, is there room for B2B on Snapchat? Does that even make sense? Like, I think if your audience is there, it makes sense. And we definitely have found an audience there that makes sense for us, but not all. Like, I'm firmly of the belief that like you should not just do a social network because it's like trendy or popular. Like, you don't need to be on every social network. You need to know your audience. And I think this is the perfect example of that, is like our audience is on Snapchat, but if they weren't, or if it was really a struggle, I probably would stop using Snapchat and probably focus on Instagram. If you feel like your audience is there, you already have an audience there, if you're limited bandwidth, go for it. I think it's a little easier to use in some ways too. You're able to upload stuff from your camera roll, which you now can do on Snapchat, but they're sort of discouraging it, or they're not making it look pretty. So I think for small businesses, if you're just getting started, if you have a really limited bandwidth, it might be worth it. I think this always on thing that you're talking about is really interesting too, is, you don't have to feel pressured to like build out a crazy content calendar that you keep up with every day. You can put something out once a week, and that's still okay. Are you thinking about using Instagram stories? Is it something that you're already using, or is that not on your radar yet?
We've used it. We started using it on the TD Garden side a little bit. For an event that really didn't feel like a good fit for our Snapchat audience, which is a lot of younger concert goers, and this was more of a local charity event, so that was really a better fit for our Instagram audience, and we used it there and it was great. One thing that was nice about it is that multiple people could add to it who were logged in. Other people who don't have access to Instagram could send me photos, just text them to me, and I could add those. So that part of it was really great.
That's awesome. This reminds me, we got a question from Haley on Twitter a little while ago, and she was asking about multiple logins. Now, could you talk a little bit about that? And I'm gonna like, because you guys have been with Snapchat for a while, you guys have some like some beta features that maybe like aren't totally fully available yet, but likely will be at some point. Can you talk a little bit about that feature?
Yeah, so we do have a feature. I believe it comes with stories. You get this feature as well. So if you do a very large Snapchat buy at some point, you would get that, where you can have multiple people have access to just upload to a story that is your brand's story, basically. So you can have, I think, up to 5 users have multiple accounts contributing. Otherwise, I believe you can only have one person logged in at a time, which can be a little tricky. One thing that I've done before I had that access was you can have one snap sort of pending in your phone and not share it yet. So if you have one from earlier in the day that you want it to be like the kickoff to your story, one sitting there because it's a little awkward, you can hold that in limbo in your phone. So you can at least have one sort of waiting, which can help just building a better cohesive story. If you
how do you do that? Can you tell us how you do that?
Just take your snap and leave your app open, basically. So make sure you have a charged phone. But you can do that, and it just helps rather than having one snap sort of announcing your story and lingering there for a while before you have any follow-up.
One of the things that we do here is we will put our phones in airplane mode and then basically build out that story. It kind of depends on what you're trying to do, right? If you're like going throughout a day and like sharing throughout an event, like, yeah, it makes sense to share in real time. But if you're kind of putting together one story and you want it to drop at once, we'll do airplane mode, and then you take it out mode and you just like tap each one, and then it'll upload. And so it'll all upload at once. And that will also help with that with that thing. But yeah, I think multiple logins is really important to be aware of, that like for most people that's not possible. We have had we early on had some challenges with that. So for those of you who follow HubSpot on Snapchat, you know HubSpot Inc. If you're not following us yet, you know we share a lot of culture content. We do talk a lot about our brand as a company and like what it's like to work here. So I work really closely with our culture team, and so they manage the account a lot of the time as well. And so early on, we would have situations where we would be like logging in to get each other's numbers, and what'll happen is it'll boot the other person out. And so if that other person has like airplane mode, like loaded up, you've just like gotten rid of all of their snaps. So definitely if you have multiple people, make sure you're aware of that and make sure that you're being really careful with that. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to sort of work around that. So as part of this Instagram conversation, you're talking a lot about demographics. Do you mind talking a little bit about, I know this is kind of a hot subject, is like, is the Snapchat demographic, are they super young? Are they getting older? Like, what are your thoughts there? How do you look at that?
I don't have any hard numbers, obviously. That's something that Snapchat's sort of keeping close. Yeah. But from just my experiences activating our fans and having some two-way conversation, I do see a range. We see some very young fans that are more of what you'd expect, as well as some people who are much older who are still very engaged in the platform and using it the right way. So I don't think it's necessarily just meant for young people, but I do think it depends on your brand too and who you're attracting to follow you.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we've seen, and yeah, this is very anecdotal, but I feel like in the last year, we've seen a huge shift where we've seen a lot more people who are, in their late 20s, early mid 30s, even into their 40s. And that was another question we got too. I definitely think that age is shifting a little bit, especially for the audience that's a little bit more tech savvy, a little bit more interested in new apps and social media, that kind of thing. So I definitely wouldn't rule it out if your audience is a little bit older, but yeah, experiment with Instagram as well. Okay, so I promised 30 minutes. I want to make sure that we wrap up on time. Kelsey, do you have any last minute tips? Like if you could tell yourself, when you started running this account, a year ago, 2 years ago, what would you tell yourself then that you know now? Any words of wisdom, any pearls?
I think just emphasizing the planning part for stories and just making sure that it's not that easy to come up with something witty that's really small and also has a fun emoji as you might think. So planning that out is just really important.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a huge point, is like, I would say that too. I think that's probably the most important part. And then the second most important part is like, have a plan for how you're going to make sure this account is going to keep growing and how you're going to keep growing this presence. Otherwise it's going to plateau at a certain point. All right, we're at 1:30. Kelsey, thank you so much for doing this with us. You had so many awesome insights that were really helpful for me. I know we've gotten a lot of feedback already. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. Guys, if this is interesting for you, if you got some value out of this, if this is more, you want to see more of this in the future, definitely shoot us a tweet, let us know, tell your friends, and we'll try to do some more of these in the future. So yeah, get back to work. Have a good day. Thanks again, Kels. Bye, guys.
Thank you.